It is October 7th, and we're getting started right around 2:02 p.m. today, local time. And I am the Transportation, Mobility, and Accessibility Program Manager here at PAG. And in no particular order, I'm just going to call on different folks that I see that have joined the meeting today and ask them just to do a brief introduction of their name and the organization that they represent. So in no particular order, Lena.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lena Perrell. I'm a lead planner at the City of Tucson in the Housing and Community Development Department in the Planning Division. I do a lot of planning and policy work, strategic planning for the city in the Housing Department and the city overall. I'm one of the city's Prosperity Initiative point staff as well. But today I'll be talking a little bit about our People, Communities, and Homes investment plan. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being a part of today's committee. I see Lisa Florin.
Hey everyone, Lisa Florin. I'm the Senior Director of Financial Wellness at United Way. I also oversee housing stability and homelessness. And today I actually am also kind of here on behalf of Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness to share some results from their community survey and also some updates about some of the homelessness numbers for the county.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's see, I see Tony Bruno as well.
Hi,
Tony,
everyone.
thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony Bruno. I'm the Associate Director south of Tucson at Valley Assistance Services.
Great. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you being here as well. Let's see, Mr. McKinney.
Good afternoon. Tom McKinney. I represent Interfaith Community Services. And thanks for asking me to be part.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your investment of time as well. So thank you. Let's see, who else do I see on the call today that we would like to welcome? Cassie.
Hi, everyone. Cassie Lundeen with Pima County Community and Workforce Development. Our department runs a lot of our community development, homeless services, workforce, among others, including rental assistance and utility assistance. And I'm very excited to be part of the team.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here as well. And then I see Sarah Denman. Is that correct pronunciation? I apologize if I'm not saying it correctly.
Yes, you said it right. Sarah Denman. I apologize. I'm at a conference right now, so if it's loud, I'm sorry about that. I am from the town of Oro Valley. I'm the Economic Development Programs Manager. We do focus a lot on our BRE program, workforce development, and I'm really happy to be able to attend. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it, Sarah. And then I see Liz. Is it Rabago? Is that correct?
Yes, Liz Rábago. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm not happy. I don't know what happened with the video.
Can you not see the?
Ms.
No.
Rabago, you need to promote to a panelist in order to turn your camera on. I'll send you the link again.
Thank you.
Right. So Liz, would you like me to circle back once you have the panelist element, or are you comfortable just introducing yourself right now? Okay, we will circle back. Let's see. If I ask you to do your introduction twice, you can humble me and say that you've already introduced yourself, because I just lost my train of thought, so I apologize. So Brianna.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna Calvillo. I'm the project coordinator at Direct Advocacy and Resource Center. And I apologize. I am actually in my vehicle right now, so I'll be hopping on my computer once I get home. Happy to be here.
Okay, all right. Well, be safe. Thank you for being here. And then I see Elizabeth Reeves.
Yes, I'm here. And I sent you an email. Lisa Reams is out of the country right now. Asked if she could present on the 21st at the second meeting.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank
So,
you. I appreciate being
yeah.
here. Thanks for the late and help getting into the meeting. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Glad to help. Let's see. Cassie, did I afford you an opportunity to introduce yourself yet?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Okay, I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure. Let's see. And then I think that's everyone. Did I miss someone? Lisa Schaefer, did I call on you yet? I'm sorry.
No, Lisa Schaefer, Town of Marana. And I thought I hit panelist, but I can't undo my camera either. So if they want to send that back, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm fine staying off camera.
Okay. All right. Sorry. All right. All right. I think we have done all of the introductions. Oh, I see Carolyn
Hi.
Lewis.
Hi,
Carolyn,
sorry. I hopped on a few minutes late, so sorry about that. I'm
No,
Caroline
it's
Lewis.
perfect timing. We were just getting ready to segue introductions, and I was still allowing my brain to catch up with who I allowed to introduce themselves and who I didn't. So we're glad to have you. So go
Great.
ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, well, I'm Caroline Lewis. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the Pima County Health Department. Happy to be here.
Great. Thank you for being here. Oh, and I see Kim Trevino just joined us. So hi, Kim. Go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Hi, Janine. My name is Kim Trevino, and I'm the grant writer from Catholic Community Services of Southern Arizona. And of course, we do multiple social services, deaf services, foster care, youth services, child welfare, food pantry, domestic violence shelter, homeless shelter, housing transitional services. Pretty much everything you can think of, we do. And
Great.
I also didn't hit the right button apparently because I'm off camera as well.
That's okay. We'll see if we can upgrade you to panelist, and we'll make all things right. And then I see Mary O'Donoghue is joined us. I want Mary to be able to introduce herself, and then Liz. I think you are upgrading, so I'm not sure where we stand with your introduction. So we'll make sure we circle back with you as well. So go ahead, Mary.
See you again. This is Mary O'Donoghue, and I am the Executive Director with Southern Arizona Senior Pride. We provide supportive services and social programming for older LGBTQ adults.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you being here. Good to see you. And then Liz.
Yes, of course, Liz Ravago. I am an independent consultant or a small business owner. I am part of the Community Coalition for Prosperity with the Community Advisory Team, and I'm glad to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. All right. I think that concludes our introductions. If I am mistaken, just go ahead and raise your virtual hand, so to speak, and we will make amends for that. So once again, thank you so much for your investment of time. We are going to try to hold tight to our 2-hour time frame that I promised to keep this meeting at. So we have a lot to cover. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the next item on the agenda. All right, so the next item on the agenda is with regard to in-kind reporting. And as you might know, that regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. And PAG collects data on the time dedicated to those meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. So if you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know now by either a verbal or a show of virtual hand, or you can send me an email so that we can account for that correctly. And with that, it's important to know that time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable of the agenda and meeting materials. And at the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in this meeting. Time spent working on PAG or RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. All right, so let me just see if anyone had raise their hand with regard to their position being paid with federal dollars. So I see right now 3 hands. So Lisa Florin, Carolyn Lewis, and Tony Bruno, and Cassie London. And then if I'm missing anyone, feel free to send me an email so that we can account for as well. Right. And I see Elizabeth Reeves as well.
Yeah, our federal dollars come to the state, so I'm not sure how that counts, but
Yeah, we can connect after the meeting and make sure we have an appropriate understanding. So remind me to reach out to you and we'll take care of that. All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda. All right, so we're going to be reviewing the funding amounts and going through some discussion tools. But before we get started, I just wanted to first and foremost, because I know different people joined at slightly different stages of the introductions, I just wanted to thank you for being a part of this particular social services planning subcommittee. And just as a reminder, this subcommittee is going to be recommending funding allocations for Pima County for various service categories of the Federal Social Services Block Grant, more abbreviatedly known as SSBG, to the Arizona Department of Economic Security, or DES. And so as a high-level view of the objectives, or the guidance rather, set before us, it includes the following goals for the SSBG program in the state of Arizona. And much like the email that you likely received, it includes achieving or maintaining economic self-support to prevent, reduce, or eliminate dependency, achieving or maintaining self-sufficiency, including reduction or prevention of dependency, preventing or remedying neglect, abuse, or exploitation of children and adults unable to protect their own interests, preserving, rehabilitating, or reuniting families, preventing or reducing inappropriate institutional care by providing community-based care, home-based care, or other forms of less intensive care. And lastly, securing referral or admission for institutional care when other forms of care are not appropriate, or providing services to individuals in institutions. So with that, here's some important background on SSBG and perhaps some additional context. So this committee, of course, provides recommendations on funding allocations for Pima County for various service categories of the Federal Social Services Block Grants, SSBG, to the Arizona Department of Economic Security, like previously mentioned. Human service organizations in Pima County can then contract with the state to provide services using these funds. So there's basically about 29 categories under the Social Services Block Grant. However, our task before us is really focused on probably like 8 or 9 of these particular categories. It's important to remember that the recommendations made from your work on this committee may result in funding for agencies in state fiscal year 2027. However, keep in mind the total amount of money available for Pima County through this block grant really doesn't change significantly from year to year, and it's typically around 1.4 million. And we're going to see the more specific details of that in just a moment. And just as a reminder, this committee will discuss local issues and trends to determine the local priorities. It will make funding recommendations for service categories, not agencies, and it does not review applications, reports, or have input into the state process once the plan is approved. So let's go ahead and get started with just reviewing the state fiscal year 27 funding and service intents, because that is kind of the foundational element of what we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and ask my IT team to go ahead and put that up on the screen for everyone to be able to view. Let's see if anyone has any challenges with that viewpoint, let us know and we'll see how we can accommodate appropriately. All right, let's see. Don't see any hands up asking for additional assistance. So, all right, I think we're probably in good shape. All right, so we're going to start with the tabs down at the bottom, just kind of as a flow for what to expect. We're going to start with the first tab, which is DCS, Department of Child Safety. And then we're going to move forward with the other tabs from left to right. So under the Department of Child Safety, you'll see under the services column, there's 3 different services. The first is supportive intervention guidance counseling, supportive intervention guidance counseling again, but you'll notice the target groups are different. One is for adult child and the other one is for AFC, and we'll give the service intents behind that in just a moment. And then behavioral therapeutic activities, and that again is for children. So if we look from left to right, you'll notice that we are focused on the state fiscal year 2027 at the local plan level. And if we look at the amount listed, you can see it hasn't really changed from what was suggested for the state fiscal year 2026 local plan level. And so for supportive intervention guidance counseling for adult and children, it's $34,602. And just for the intent, it's to provide counseling and guidance for youth and adult domestic violence offenders due to increasing violence in the homes. And then supportive intervention guidance counseling for the target group AFC, it's $182,427. And as you might see, it's to assist low-income children and families who are otherwise ineligible for state services to access available resources, services, and benefit programs effectively, including counseling for problem pregnancies. And then under behavioral therapeutic activities for children, you'll see the amount is $69,003. And the service intent for this is to minimize the impact of the delays and problem behaviors by children with special needs, behavioral problems, by providing learning assessment and support skills to child care professionals in child care facilities, behavioral therapeutic activities, including intervention and assistance to families, and child care or preschool staff would be provided. So that is a summary of the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level for the Department of Child Safety. And then we're going to move to the next tab, which is DAAS, which is Division of Aging and Adult Services. And you'll see there's 3 services listed here. They also have their respective target group. And for the different services, it's home care for elderly adults, and then you'll see case management and then home delivered meals. For home care for elderly adults, it's personal care, housekeeping, home health, and shopper service. Clients are unable to meet all the needs of maintaining a home in a safe and sanitary manner or shop for their own food and have insufficient support systems such as family and friends to assist them. And the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level is $350,648. And you'll see the service intent to the right to enable clients to remain in their homes by providing assistance with essential personal needs and in performing routine household maintenance, including shopping for basic needs, as well as reporting changes in client status. For case management, you'll see for the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level, it's $351,159. And that's to enable clients to remain in the least restrictive setting possible by providing care coordination, including assessment of needs, linkage to services and benefit programs, effective utilization of available resources, advocacy, and continued monitoring. And then for home delivered meals, you'll see the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level has $80,725, and that's to achieve or maintain adequate nutrition by delivering nutritious meals to the client's residence. And then we're going to move on to Child and Community Services Division, CCSD. I think this is a category that's been somewhat renamed over the last year or two. So there are a variety of services and respective service intents for this one. They are rooted in supportive intervention, guidance and counseling, crisis intervention, shelter services, case management, legal assistance, emergency shelter, and housing support services. And the target groups range from adult and children, or just adults, or adults and youth. So for the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level with regard to supportive intervention guidance counseling, it's $24,766, and that's to provide crisis counseling and emergency shelter, as well as assisting clients in stabilizing their situations and accessing other services and benefit programs. And then there's crisis intervention shelter services for adults, and that is $63,580. And that's for potential victims of sexual assault or domestic abuse to prevent physical or emotional harm. Then it's followed by case management for adults and children, $37,711 for the state fiscal year 2027. And that is for domestic violence and obtaining safe and stable living situations and developing a case plan. Then you'll see that there are 3 different categories of legal assistance. The first is $19,216, and that's to protect the rights of individuals by providing assistance with civil legal issues for individuals and families in need of food stamp assistance. I think I need to get my prescription updated. Sorry about that. And then a legal assistance for adults. The state fiscal year 2027 local plan level is 19,216, and that is to protect the rights of individuals by providing assistance with civil legal issues for individuals and families in need of food stamp assistance. And then, whoops, I read the wrong one. The last one is to protect the rights of individuals by providing consultation and legal services for individuals and families facing eviction or needing landlord-tenant mitigation. The last one in legal assistance is 28,565, and that's providing assistance with civil legal issues, including domestic situations, landlord-tenant problems, and obtaining appropriate identification for government services. And then we move to emergency shelter, $53,128, persons who are without shelter or a fixed place of residence to prevent homelessness. And lastly, housing support services, $43,148, and that is to prevent homelessness by providing services that focus on addressing immediate needs to keep persons at risk of becoming homeless in their current housing if possible, and by providing the necessary supports to maintain that housing or to locate new housing if necessary. And then we're going to move to WDA, which is Workforce Development Administration. It has one service category, which is employment services, and that's for adults, which is any individual 18 years of age or older. And the state fiscal year 2027 local plan level is $39,538. And it's to provide employment services such as childcare, transportation, employment screening, assessment or testing, structured job skills and job seeking skills, specialized therapy, occupational speech, physical, special training and tutoring, including literacy training, GED preparation and pre-vocational training, provision of books, supplies, and instructional material, counseling, case management that works to ensure graduation and job placement, transportation, and referral to community resource for unemployed adults. Services should also include job training, minimally an associate's degree or certificate, for programs that have a demand for skilled job opportunities. Services are intended primarily for a single head of households, as well as unemployed adults, elderly, low-income adults, youth 18 to 28, at risk of homelessness, families, and rural adults. And then lastly, RSA, which is Rehabilitation Services Administration. And the categories are interpreter services for deaf adults, which is deaf adults who need interpreter assistance in accessing needed services, and is supportive intervention guidance counseling for hearing impaired persons who have problems in adjusting to their disability at work and in family and in interpersonal relationships. And then if we were to look at the local plan level for interpreter service for deaf adults, it's $27,092, and that's to assist individuals who are deaf and accessing and utilizing community services, including emergency services, by providing interpreter services. And then the last one, the supportive intervention guidance counseling for hearing impaired persons, the local plan level for state fiscal year 2027 is $30,103, and that's to assist clients who are deaf or hearing impaired in solving or learning to cope with their disability by providing intervention support and counseling. All right, so those are the 5 tabs associated with the state fiscal year funding and service intents. So with that as our baseline of understanding how the funding and service intents are currently put out there by the Department of Economic Security, we're going to shift to one of our discussion tools. And I see Elizabeth has her hand up, so I'm gonna call on you and Elizabeth in just a moment. But we are going to shift to a discussion tool that will serve as a starting point. And our goal with the discussion tool at this juncture is to try and better understand which populations and services might face the biggest cuts in the coming year or two relative to different federal changes. So I'm going to let Lisa Florin kind of lead the use of that discussion tool here in just a moment, but I know Elizabeth had her hand up. So let me circle back with Elizabeth.
Thank you. I just had a question because in the introduction you mentioned under goals for the third section, you talked about securing referrals to a higher level of care, and assisting people to apply for a higher level of care when needed. And I didn't see that in any of these, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the categories are called. Service.
Okay. Yeah, I see what
Service
you're
areas,
talking
and I
about. That
just,
was
yeah, I was
the
just
bullet
curious.
point number 5 that we went through. Yeah, let me ask that question to DES, and then I can provide a good answer for our next meeting, just so I can make sure I have all the details on that for you. That's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you, because
Yeah, no
that's
problem.
definitely a need that's not met in the community. So that was interesting to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem. I could definitely ask that question. All right. So let me see if I missed anyone. I see Magdalena. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to introduce yourself, so let me go ahead and give you that opportunity real quick, and then I'm going to allow Lisa to get started. I don't know if Magdalena can hear me. All
Yeah,
right, I will.
she might have had to step away, but
Okay,
if you don't
sorry.
know, I was gonna introduce you, Magda.
You may, and I'm not sure how to. This is new to me, so I'm navigating this. I can. Oh, there you go. So if I join as a panel.
Yeah, I think once you're upgraded to panelist, you have the ability to show your camera, but until then, it's a little bit different. But I think you're still able to introduce yourself through audio either way.
Ah, there we go. Sorry about that.
Oh, perfect. There you are. Hi.
Magdalena Verdugo with CEO of the YWCA of Southern Arizona. Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here. And I apologize. I did arrive a little late. Technology is not my thing, so I had to figure things out. So thank you.
That's all right. That's all right. I think you're caught up for the most part, because I know different resources were provided in advance of the meeting for those that are part of this subcommittee. So you're probably in good shape either way. So thank you for being here. So I appreciate your investment of time. All right. So Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to kind of lead us through one of the discussion tools that we have.
Yeah, sure. And I'll be able to share it looks like I'll be able to share my screen in a moment. Before I pull it up though, so just for some context, I hadn't been involved in this committee until last year. I know traditionally there have been staff from United Way who have assisted with it, and many of the people that are on here have come year after year. But then I think this year there are a couple of new people. So one thing I learned for context is that many years in a row, we had just recommended the same amount of funding in every category. And no one's like exactly sure how we ended up with these specific allocations for the different areas. But usually the conversation kind of happens each year that, yeah, there's still so much need in all these areas. Everybody is struggling. We don't want to take anything away from any specific function or need. So the committee had kind of just fallen into this pattern of being like, all right, we'll just stay the course year after year. But last year, we started having some conversations about, I don't know, I feel like it was almost maybe even just getting more comfortable with changing some of the allocations to different areas and having a different process for just thinking through like what would justify or be used to inform giving a little bit more money to certain areas over others. And so one idea that we had put forward was looking at a lot of the community surveys, community feedback sessions that were happening in our region that overlapped with a lot of these areas. And the thinking was there have been so many kind of surveying efforts, so many opportunities to engage the community about what they think community needs are and what they're seeing, that it would be helpful to maybe use that to guide some of our thinking in thinking about, yeah, just what community priorities are and if we should consider moving some money around. So one thing that was really interesting is last year we ended up out of the like 1.4 million that was set, we recommended moving around, I think, like 30,000 of it or so, which is, not very much. And there were a couple areas that we said, okay, maybe reduce this award by like 10%. not because we know it's not needed, but just it hadn't shown up as much as a community voiced priority. And then shifting that money to some of the areas that had shown up in a lot of the community plans, to put a little bit more money towards those things the community had said, oh, we think this is a priority. And when I was looking over what then got funded this past year, so there were like 9 different funding amounts out of those. I don't know how many categories are there, like 27 or something. Let me count them real fast.
Pretty close to that. Pretty close to 27, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And so we had recommended changing like 9 of them. And of the 9, it looks like DES actually took our new recommended amount for 4 out of the 9 areas. So that was just kind of like an interesting experiment almost, to be, no offense to DES, but to be like, oh, they did like look at our recommendations. And so they are considering the things that are coming out of this committee. So anyway, that's just some context. And now I can kind of share the calculation tool that we used last year. And in no way do I want to say we should commit to doing it this year. It's definitely just meant to be kind of a conversation starter and to open up some thinking about.
While you're pulling it up, I see Carolyn Lewis has her hand up. So whenever you have a moment, Lisa.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, I just have a quick, this might be a really basic question. I'm one of the new folks that Lisa mentioned. So just for my context, and maybe this was in the materials and I missed it, but so for the social service block grant, for these amounts that are allocated, how do those get funneled down to work happening in the county? Are there grant applications? Like, what does that process look like? And the reason I'm asking is because there's a lot of buckets and some of the amounts are larger than others. And I don't know if someone chooses who gets that or if people apply. Can you just talk a little bit about what the process of distribution looks like? Because I think that'll be helpful for those of us who are new as we think through this a little bit.
So what I can do is ask DES for more details on how that process works, because I would hate to misrepresent anything because I don't work for the Department of Economic Security. I know agencies, I don't know if I should use the word apply, but I will say the word apply for contracts under social service block grant funding, but how it begins and ends, it would be inappropriate for me to speak to that because that's not my purview. But what I can do is ask DES to kind of help shape that for us so that
is there anyone here who has gotten one that could just speak about their experience maybe? And then you wouldn't be held accountable to that, Janine.
Yeah, and then but yeah, so if anyone can speak to that, I'm grateful. But with that, I will also reach out to DES just to see if we can get just some additional context as well, if that proves to be helpful for the committee members.
Need the super specific timeline and process. I guess I'm just generally asking, organizations apply to get this funding and then DES decides who gets what based on the allocations that they make. Like, that's basically how it works.
Yeah, my understanding is agencies, submit for a contract with the state, and those contracts are relative to the funding available in whatever category they fall under. But outside of that, again, I would need to defer to either someone who has lived it or reach out to DES to give any more details on it than that.
Yeah, I don't know, Tony, or maybe like Elizabeth, have you all gotten social services block grants?
We have. I work at Pima Council on Aging, but I am not part of the grant request process, so I'm sorry I cannot speak to that specifically.
And what I can say is I was involved years ago, and by years ago I mean about 25 years ago, and I don't know that I can really comment on current, but I can say that in the past, monies that came out of SSBG were just added to contracts with people that were already contracted. At that time, there was no real process in my mind. You could go onto the procurement page for the state of Arizona and put in a request. And that's kind of how it worked.
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, well, thanks. And we'll wait the final answer, but oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I seem to be talking a lot, but may I also add that I was part of this process in like 15, 16, 17, 2015, 16, 17. And there was spirited discussion and competition about the money at that point. I think I was not part of this process in 19, 20, 21, when maybe during COVID things shifted, but just for context, that this was a hotly debated meeting in the past.
Well, maybe we'll bring the debate back today, or it'll just be a spirited, productive discussion. Okay, anything else before I kind of shift to this tool? Just to kind of illustrate what started our conversation last time. Okay, I had moved
Kimberly
to another...
has had her hand up.
Oh, we can't see that. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Kimberly.
No problem. I just wanted to, our experience, we've been applying for SSBG for probably 20 years. And we just applied this last fall. It is an Arizona procurement. You do place a bid and you're awarded a contract. So that, I don't think the process really has changed too much over the years.
Right.
All right.
So
Thank you.
yeah.
That's helpful.
So it sounds like what, this group is weighing in on is, what kind of the buckets of money should be that people can then, that will be up for the procurement. And, DES will have the final say, but we're just making recommendations about how it should be divided up in Pima County. Okay, I moved to another tab because I didn't want people to get distracted. But I'll go back. So last year, the 5 kind of community input surveys that we crosswalked the categories with were if it showed up, one, as a prosperity initiative policy, that the prosperity initiative, it emerged from engaging over 700 or 800 community stakeholders in priorities that aligned with a lot of these 5 like overarching areas. So we thought that that was an important one. And if one of the areas had an overlap, so for example, this first one, domestic violence case management with the Division of Community Assistance and Development, at least overlapped with the housing policy, the housing stability one, then it got essentially like a point for that. We also looked at this big cooperative extension needs assessment that had been done in 2022. And that one was Pima County wide, and they talked to 400 people. They weighed in on a lot of priorities that seem to overlap with these categories too, specifically health and community well-being, community and economic development. So if it showed up in cooperative extension's overall priorities, they had, I think they had like 5 sub areas, then it got a point. And then if it also showed up in one of these 2 sub areas, it got additional points. And then the last one, because this had been a recent kind of community engagement effort, was the P-CHIP assessment by the city of Tucson in 2024. And that was getting feedback from more than 500 people about priorities for their community and social service funding. And we had looked at those. We knew that there were other assessments. I mean, Caroline, you're with the health department. We had considered like the community health and needs assessment, but actually the thinking was that health didn't overlap as much with these different areas, which is why we stuck with these. And so based on that, if one of the categories had 4 or 5 points, well, actually, I should probably start with the last. So if it had 0, 1, or 2 points, there is a recommendation to just reduce a little bit of the award. If it had 3 points, recommended keeping it the same. And then all of the money that was getting moved from the 0, 1s, 2s, and 3s got moved up to priorities that had a 4 or a 5. And what I had done here is if it's in red, those are recommendations that the state seemed to take from us last year. So kind of interestingly, they did end up reducing the Rehabilitation Services Administration supportive intervention and guidance, and also the Workforce Development Administration one. That one's kind of interesting because this year, so they did reduce it for our county, and this year their recommendation is for it to go up a little bit. And then they also then took our recommendations to increase for Rehabilitation Services Administration, interpreter services for deaf adults, and also Division of Aging and Adult Services, case management for older adults. So I don't know, just to kind of start the conversation this year, I just kept it all the same. It was all the same categories, since we weren't changing the plans. And I mean, I'm open if you all have ideas of other plans that maybe we should like weigh in, happy to do that. But based on that, just kept kind of the same allocations. And this would have been the initial proposal for FY27 then. And if we did the same formula, these would be the recommendations for this coming year. So still increasing like these four, keeping these middle ones the same, reducing the last five. But, you know, that's not the end all be all. And we know that there are a lot of other things going on as well. And I mean, one thing that I did just want to reiterate is I think thinking about cuts that are coming, and not only that, but just like every area is going to be like all populations are going to be affected by these cuts. And maybe if there's a way to do it, I don't know if there is, but just trying to think of which populations are going to have the most dramatic cuts. And maybe that kind of factors into how we recommend any changes to the reallocation for Pima County. But anyway, I know it's probably confusing. If there are questions, I'm happy to. Yeah, Liz.
Lisa or Janine, do you know if there is data from like the budgeted versus the actual that's happening? So this is what it's being budgeted this year or in previous years. What's the actual out there or the actual need that it's in each of those categories? Do we even know that information? Is there a way to know? Because I think it's well, this is 1.4 and all these categories and all of that. But I'm wondering, like how are those decisions being made? And I understand like there are surveys and there's this, but is there actual data budgeted versus actual? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm adding it to my list. I now have 3 really great questions for DES, and I hate sounding like a broken record saying that I'm just going to ask DES, but again, it's just really important to get the information straight from DES so that we have all the appropriate context, and then I can provide that on our next meeting or through email or however it makes the most sense.
I'll add to Liz though that it was so many of them are the same. Their recommendations for FY27 compared to FY26, which is like the money that is like already approved and kind of set to be available, or maybe it's already been contracted. Other than that workforce one, they're all the same. So I mean, I think yeah, the actual is like this past year, and so the budget kind of matches the actual in that sense.
Right, but it has to match, right? Because that's all they have, and they have to go through what it was approved. I guess my question is, like, where is the need, and is there a document that or information that we might have to make the decisions or recommendations based on those needs that they're not going to appear on this budget versus actual, but do we have them somewhere? That if we're recommending to decrease here and increase in one line, is that the best recommendation? Is data showing us that that's...
Is there data saying there are more people in need, and if we moved more money to one category, we could help 1,000 more people? I think that's, you're looking at the impact, right? We're all serving what we can with the amount that we have. right?
Yes,
Because that's all
yes,
you do.
yes,
But how many people are we turning away
yes.
in every category?
Hmm.
I think that's the question, right? And I don't, Janine, I don't know that anybody would have that, but that's the question is, if we feel, boy, we're knocking it out of the park here, but with, let's just say, older adults, we're turning down however many people every single day because we're using the money that we have.
Okay. And those are the word choices I put in my notes so that when I serve it up to DES, I can frame it in the appropriate manner and see what response I get. But I think those are really good questions. And I see, so thank you for that. So I see Tony's hand is up. Tony, did you have a question or a comment?
I actually have two.
Okay.
And I guess the first one is when we met last time, as a committee, we asked that a letter be sent, and we had several questions we were asking at that time, or with our thoughts on how the money should be spent. And we had asked if we could see how the money was appropriated between rural and urban, and how it was appropriated in a variety of other areas. And I don't think we ever heard back. And I'm just, number one, wondering if we heard back from that letter we asked to be sent. And then the second thing I think is all of us in this room know the needs of the community in one way or another. And we also know where we've had funding cut. And if we're talking about the needs on that list, we should be I guess, filing or creating where our funds have been cut and how much. And I'm sure there are lines we all cross as a group. And that would certainly show where a definite need amongst all of us is, so that we can see where to appropriate money to based on our work. And I don't think there's any other nonprofit or agency that supports people would argue with. And that's just an observation or comment.
Okay. I will follow up on the first item that you referenced. And I just want to make sure that I have a sound understanding of the second. So I might ask for some grace in having you either restate it or paraphrase it for me, because while I was taking notes, I'm not sure that my brain was working as fast as yours, Tony. How about that? So I heard.
I'll give you that, but I'll tell you, this is day one with no coffee. So I don't know if that's true or not. Basically, we should survey ourselves within this committee and see where the shortfalls or even the federal cuts have affected us. And those cuts are going to be equal across all of our agencies. And that may give us some better insight as to where there are gaps that were not created by anything other than the lack of funding, as a starting point.
Okay. All right. I wrote that down. I think I have a better understanding of what you were communicating a moment ago. So thank you. Let's see if I see any other hands up before I give it back to Lisa. Oh, Carolyn, sorry.
No, I just put my hand up. You're fine. So newbie again, maybe another
you're
question
good.
everyone else knows the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
No, you're
Obviously, Pima County has many areas. Some are more urban, some are more rural. How does this distribution typically fall with organizations in urban areas, organizations in more rural areas? What is that typically? Like, could we see what like the distribution history was like for last year or something? Just to see kind of where things fell in terms of like geographic area?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that ties in really well with what Tony was saying about that follow-up item. So I wrote that down, underscored it, and we'll shoot that off to DES and see what we can find out. I would speculate that it's, obviously they're going to have to kind of compare and contrast the different agencies that were contracted out and where do they serve? Is it in more urban areas or is it rural? And so we'll see what information they can provide on that. So thank you. Great minds think alike. You're thinking the same as Tony, so we're good. All right. What else? Did anybody else have their hand up? All right. Lisa, I think I'm going to give it back to you. So I don't see any other comments or questions at this juncture.
I think I'm good unless you want me to shift into being one of the presenters about community needs.
Oh, okay. So sorry, I just wanted to make sure you were done with that discussion tool, if you will, before I segued to the next item on the agenda. So if you're good with that, I will ask my team to put the next item on the agenda.
I think Elizabeth has a question.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
we'll
sorry.
just share that discussion tool. It was super tiny, so it was. I would love to be able to read it a little more carefully.
Okay. Yeah, I'll work with
Janine, right?
Lisa to put it in a format where we could send it out to the subcommittee members potentially.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. All right. So, are you comfortable with that, Lisa? That we figure out an appropriate format for that?
Oh yeah, I think you have it, so you're welcome to.
Okay.
I don't know,
All
maybe
right.
just make it a PDF and send it out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Great. So I'll just ask my colleagues to go ahead and put the next agenda item up if it's not already up there. All right. So the next item is for what we call regional need and fact sheet presentation. So for those of you that are on the subcommittee, probably saw different, or hopefully saw different emails come through stating that while it's not a requirement, you do have the opportunity to do a presentation, and that could be very informal or more formal with actual slides, or you can submit what I call a fact sheet template, and there is templates provided. They're all the same, but they're just relative to the different 5 broad service categories, and you could submit those. And so different agencies had a comfort level with either submitting a fact sheet or presenting either today or in the meeting that's tentatively scheduled for the 21st. So what I would ask is if your intent is, just as a reminder, if your intent is to submit a fact sheet, that you try to get to me as soon as possible. The preference would be around the 15th. I think that's the date that I put in the email, just to be consistent. If you need a slight extension on that, let me know. I just want to make sure we have them all pulled together in advance for the meeting that's tentatively scheduled for the 21st, to be fair to my support staff and just preparing well for the meeting. And then if you do intend to do a presentation, I would like to solve for presentations to be no more than 10 minutes, because we have a 2-hour block of time and we actually have to have our meaningful conversations and be really intentional about making our recommendations. So I want to make sure we allocate enough time for that within our 2-hour window. So if there's 6 presentations and they're all 20 minutes long, we're gonna run out of time before we even get to making recommendations. So try to keep the presentations kind of concise in that way. And then just as a reminder on any kind of presentation is that you're not advocating for any one target group. They should just represent like facts or data regarding demographics, needs, and offer a regional perspective. So just want to make sure that we follow the guidelines on that. So I think, Lisa, your organization was first up on doing a presentation, and I don't know if there was any other organizations prepared to do any kind of presentation today or talk through a fact sheet that they have put together. But we can ask that question again after your presentation finishes. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for your presentation.
Sure. And I saw Lena had her hand up to do a
Okay, great.
presentation.
Yeah, I have a presentation prepared.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lena.
All right. So I thought it would be helpful, given that a lot of the funding areas involve emergency shelter, crisis services, housing stability, to just share some of the information that we have from Tucson Pima collaboration to end homelessness about changes we've seen in the past year on the system, and also some of the community surveying that they've done to let the public weigh in on what priorities they would like to see organizations and governments kind of invest in. So I'll share this. It's actually a presentation that usually the staff from TPCH does, but they couldn't make it today. So I was like, oh, I think I can probably do it. I'm currently the board chair for TPCH, so this is good practice for me. And just for some background, if you're not familiar, so continuum of care, it's a mandate from HUD, currently still a mandate. Maybe things might be changing in the future, but as of right now, the continuum of care is set up for communities in order to help allocate homelessness funding. And in Arizona, we have 3 continuums of care. We have one for Maricopa, one for Pima, and then balance of state, which covers all of the other areas. And so the Pima continuum of care, does the funding allocation for about $14 million in HUD homelessness funding that comes into our community, but also has the role of being a regional planning body, helping to bridge service gaps and operating the coordinated entry system for anybody who is experiencing homelessness and looking to find housing. And I don't know if we really need to know the organization. I didn't change a lot of these slides from a larger presentation they often do. I did think this one was helpful though. Again, just to reiterate what the coalition's role is, because they do a lot of needs assessment work and also trying to help with strategic planning and evaluating programs that are working well, but especially that needs assessment piece and the planning I thought would be really pertinent for this committee to look at some of the information that they have. And so last year, through the programs that were funded by TPCH, which is limited in scope, it's a lot of permanent supportive housing programs, rapid rehousing programs, but also some outreach programs and supportive services. We had more than 5,400 people that engaged. Do you want to just point out the fleeing domestic violence number? Because I think that overlaps with a lot of the categories that are flagged for social service Block Grant and also the domestic violence survivors. And on that note too, when I was looking at some of the PIT count data, so the PIT is the point in time count, and it happens once a year, and they deploy volunteers all across the community to interview people that look like they slept outside last night and can confirm that, just to kind of get a snapshot of homelessness in our community. It's a requirement from HUD, but it also does kind of help illustrate if there are trends year over year. And adult survivors of domestic violence was the population that had seemed to have increased the most dramatically. Between 2024 and 2025, it went up 58%. So it does, to me, that kind of speaks to that there is a growing need to serve survivors of domestic violence with a lot of these crisis services that are flagged as part of SSBG. Other groups that went up kind of dramatically, though, were also adults with substance use disorders. That group was up 37%. And adults with serious mental illness, that was up 24%. And then another one that's just kind of noteworthy is number of people under 18, so children, that also was up 16%. And so looking at some of the categories that involve services for services for children that might be in unstable housing situations, we are seeing a rise in those families ending up experiencing homelessness. So that might be kind of a flag of maybe some more support for some of the prevention is needed. I think this was just to kind of reiterate the strategic planning thing. I don't know why I included, oh, then going to this strategic planning. So another thing TPCH did in the past couple of months was set out a survey to community members and also to stakeholders working in the homelessness space prevention or intervention to ask about what they would want to prioritize as a community. And these were the things that emerged that both local community members and residents and the service providers agreed on. So these are the ones that are probably going to be adopted into the strategic plan. They had about 300 people overall respond to this survey, I believe. But yeah, I think the one that really jumps out at me, the number one overall, I think, was everyone supported doing more towards prevention. Everyone just really called out that we need a stronger prevention system. We need more investment in prevention services. It doesn't seem to be as coordinated. So yeah, I wanted to flag that one as that's come up as a priority from our homelessness coalition. Other things just to consider, we're still awaiting with a lot of the housing grants what the new federal guidelines are going to look like. But based on recent executive orders and some smaller notice of funding opportunities that have gone out federally, it does seem like we might expect some really dramatic changes and some requirements on programming that just completely turn upside down what we have been prioritizing for our homelessness funding and our prevention funding for the past couple of years. So that'll be something that we'll want to be aware of. And it'll probably end up kind of unfolding as a need for more permanent supportive housing, more prevention services. One of the things that's been flagged is that likely a lot of the housing programs are not going to have work requirements, and that's going to make it really difficult for a lot of people to stay in them, which might result in, yeah, just more people losing that housing and ending up in the homeless system. One last thing that I'll add that they just sent to me during this meeting is they recently did kind of a system demand analysis and wanted to note that last year there were 7,400 unique households that were seeking services through the coordinated entry system in Pima County. And of that, we were only able to serve through our homelessness system about 29%. So yeah, I think when you're talking about kind of the demand, Liz, and the people that are being turned away, it is pretty significant. It's, you know, more than 2/3 of people seeking housing services who have already lost their housing, we're not able to serve. So that's the cheery news from the housing space. But
I just want to add to yours, Lisa. I think that it's not different, that need. It's the same thing for people that are potentially to be evicted or potentially, right? It's you're serving 1/3 and 2/3 aren't, you know, we're saying call back tomorrow, call a different agency. So that trickle effect.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I wish I could remember because now that you're saying it, maybe I can send it out to be considered at the next meeting. But there had been a presentation recently by someone at Zero where they had done kind of an assessment of a lot of the groups that are doing emergency assistance and looking at their calls and how many they're able to respond to. And they had done some like measurement around, what the unmet need was. So I can look into that just to add to Tom's personal like experience at ICS. And
I was going to say, I think I have that presentation, so I can share that.
Yeah. All right.
And Lisa, is there any data or data points when you were talking about the 7,400 unique households and only, you know, able to, that they support like 29%, but in the calculation of the unique household, is there also perhaps like a data point that talks about like recidivism, like how many of those, you know, once were successful in getting housing, but for whatever reason, things shifted and they back to square one, you know, a kind of like relapse in a previous condition or mode of behavior, not necessarily a criminal behavior, because there's kind of two definitions of recidivism. But I just was curious if there's any data points on that, because it can still increase, but then you could, with new individuals experiencing homelessness, but then you might also still have a certain percentage that are, you know, kind of struggling and continuing with a progression of
Yeah, they're always, we do have data around it. I don't know it off the top of my head. It's something I can share. But in general, I know that I think our families that tended to have the strongest outcomes in terms of stabilizing, and then other populations that didn't. I mean, what that kind of says though is that's like a need for more of the case management services. And when there is more of an investment in that, I think most of them do have better outcomes. So that's actually kind of the mismatch, I think, with when people aren't able to hold on to the housing that they get and end up losing it.
Right. Yeah, I just was curious because it does help speak to the need in different areas. So just kind of curious. So thank you. I thought I saw someone else's hand up before I started talking, so my apologies if I clipped someone. Were there any other questions for Lisa before we turn it over to Lena for a presentation? All right. All right. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate your investment in time with that presentation. I know, Anna, you stepped into doing it on behalf of somebody else, so appreciate you doing that as well. All right. So Lena.
Yes. Okay.
Right. Hi, Lena. Thank you.
Hi. Yep. So Lisa actually briefly talked about this already, but I'm going to be discussing the City of Tucson's People, Community, and Homes Investment Plan, which is the Housing and Community Development Department's 5-year strategic plan. We went through updating that plan last year, and it was adopted in November of 2024. And I'll be going over kind of the community engagement, the community needs that we heard from the community over our engagement last year, both with community members, also with stakeholders, and some of the data that we collected also while doing the research to kind of identify our priorities going forward. So just to quickly, again, so our People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan is our strategic plan for the Housing and Community Development Department, and it establishes these strategic goals and objectives for the department over the next 5 years, and it provides direction for decision-making and department funding. And we kind of see it kind of in these 3 buckets, which I think relate to a lot of those different social services that we're talking about for the grants here. But we see our kind of department's objective is to create equitable pathways to opportunity for people. And we see that pathways to that opportunity start with people, but they also include our communities and include having a home. And so just to kind of jump right into our community survey. So we did this last year and we had about 479 survey respondents in our survey. And so I'm going to go through kind of our key kind of takeaways from the survey. The first question that we did, it was kind of like each person who was taking the survey got 10 votes and they got to distribute those votes based on what they thought the biggest priority was. So we asked the question, what do you see as Tucson's biggest challenge or challenges in creating equitable access to opportunity for all its residents? And again, someone could put all their 10 votes in one, they could spread them out, kind of however they thought personally they wanted to prioritize those. And if there was something that it wasn't there, we also included an other, but a lot of those things that were added in the other category kind of fit in other categories as well. But our number 1 priority by far was the lack of affordable or attainable housing options, followed by homelessness, crime and safety, poverty, and then kind of rounding out, we have the lack of safe, connected, convenient transit options, extreme heat, drought, and other environmental impacts, inequitable access to services and community resources, including education, and barriers to good health. So from when we did the plan last time in 2020, housing was like kind of up there, but it really shot up when we were doing our engagement last year. Kind of no surprise with housing prices going up and housing like rents going up and all of that. And then following up with that question, we asked what should the City of Tucson fund to address those challenges? And so this was an open-ended question. So these aren't in any particular order, but basically I kind of just summarized the top 10 responses that we heard. So building more affordable housing development or more housing in general, expanding public transit connections and fare-free transit, increasing social services and safety net programs, increasing food assistance and limiting food insecurity, increasing access for eviction prevention services and emergency assistance, and then also other housing assistance like down payment assistance or rental assistance, adding more physical and mental health services, increasing access to, more emergency homeless shelters, especially low barrier shelters, various homelessness prevention and mitigation services, increasing different public safety programs, and increasing access to job assistance services and training. And then this was a question that a lot of people did not like. We did this as a ranked choice question, something that we think a lot about in housing, and especially with the Prosperity Initiative, is when we're trying to decide our budget, are we prioritizing funding for programs and initiatives that focus on preventing or alleviating poverty? We think they're both important, but we were curious what the community thought. So when we talk about preventing poverty, we think about things like access to quality early childhood education, increasing public transit, building more affordable housing, kind of those like long-term tasks to kind of break that intergenerational poverty versus like alleviating current poverty with things like emergency shelters, food assistance, and debt relief. And from that ranked choice, we did see a majority thinking to prioritize our funding for programs and initiatives that prevent poverty. But just so people could also, say if they wanted it 50-50, we added another question. And while the majority did say kind of split the funding 50-50 between alleviating and preventing poverty, there is still, if you kind of add up, a preference for the prevention poverty initiatives. And then I'm going to quickly go through these. These were our stakeholder focus groups. So we did a number of different focus groups, and these are just the challenges we heard from these different groups. So in terms of children and youth services providers, they saw a lack of livable wages, wage jobs, affordable housing, and accessible mental health resources as the biggest challenges for youth. For older adult services providers and advocates, it was the lack of affordable housing for older adults, rising rental costs and the basic living expenses, increasing expenses for in-home care and other medical costs. For affordable housing developers, the challenges for building more housing where it had to do with zoning and parking regulations and kind of high construction costs and lack of funding, but also community backlash and NIMBYism. For our housing justice advocates, they saw the biggest challenges being a lack of affordable housing, lack of central resources and services, negatively targeting people experiencing homelessness. And then our disability service providers and people with disabilities, our focus group for that was about financial constraints, lack of accessible housing and shelters, barriers to entry for services and programs like transit and mental health services. For our community safety officials and advocates, they saw their biggest challenges being substance misuse, rising rents, slumlords, lack of low barrier shelters and safe housing. We had a homelessness and housing services providers focus group. And again, you're seeing, when we were going through it, we saw time and time again, the biggest thing being a lack of affordable housing, insufficient wages, rising rents, lack of transitional housing or supportive housing options. For economic development professionals, it was about challenges around predatory lending, inadequate financial literacy, rising costs without wage increases. For individuals, we had a focus group for individuals with lived experience of homelessness, and they saw the biggest challenges just access to the basic necessities like food, hygiene supplies, showers, safe places to cool and hydrate, and the need for more shelter and housing opportunities. And we also interviewed and did a focus groups with housing and community development staff, and they saw the biggest challenges in their work being just shortages in housing, excessive fees for tenants, rising utility costs, lack of job training opportunities for tenants, lack of public awareness of different resources and programs. And then I'm going to kind of switch into our like regional data that we collected for the plan. So in order to make our priorities, we again took our community feedback, our stakeholder feedback, and the most up-to-date and current data we could find, as well as other current local and regional plans that were related. So one thing that we look at is that poverty remains persistently high in Tucson and Pima County. So especially in Tucson, while it has kind of gone down, we've still kind of stayed relatively high, especially compared to Pima County, especially compared to Arizona and even the national average. And that poverty does not affect the community equitably. So if you are a person of color, your rates of poverty in Tucson and Pima County are higher than if you are a white person. And as an age group, children experience the highest rates of poverty in Tucson, with 24.3% of all children being below the poverty line in 2023. And then this wasn't in our P-CHIP plan. It came out like 2 weeks after we adopted it, but I wanted to include it about our housing needs assessment that we published in December of 2024, just showing that Tucson will need to produce over 62,000 new housing units between 2024 and 2045 to address the current need. And that current need is driven by underproduction and people experiencing homelessness, and that future need with the anticipated growth. And something interesting about the division is that, yes, there's a need for the affordable housing, for supportive housing, for shelters, for transitional housing, but there's also a need for that market rate supply as well. And kind of digging into the housing data more about just median rent increases from 2017 to 2024 in Tucson. So there was a 66.4% increase in median rent in Tucson from 2017 to 2024, with the largest increases being between 2020 and 2022. And then medium home sale prices, looking at that, also we had an 86.4% increase in Tucson in home prices, with, again, same deal with the rents, biggest increases being in 2020 to 2022, but still increasing. And I wanted to just include some more housing instability numbers. So the number of affordable and available units needed in Pima County at or below 30% of the adjusted median family income was about a little over 23,000. And that was like our old housing supply. So before our housing needs assessment came out, and now that number is greatly increased. In 2023, only 38.2% of homes were affordable to families earning the local median income. And then I couldn't find before this meeting the eviction filings for last year, but in 2023, there were almost 13,000 Tucson and Pima County eviction filings, which was the highest rate since 2019. And then Lisa already kind of talked about in the point in time count, and but yeah, just wanted to show that it has, obviously there was a dramatic increase in sheltered and unsheltered homelessness from 2020 to 2022. And we can see that from 2024 to 2025, those in shelter did increase, and those in unsheltered decreased, but the total number did go up. But a caveat with the point in time count is it is usually a severe undercount of what actual homelessness is in our community. It's a good tool to kind of see that snapshot, but it's not good at seeing homelessness over a longer period of time. And it misses a lot of the hard to count people who are couch surfing, people who are like children or youth who are homeless, survivors of domestic abuse, folks who aren't just in very well-seen places. So we know that that is an undercount. And I just wanted to mention, just showing what our priorities ended up being for the People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan. So these aren't in any particular order, but we had them be solving homelessness, optimize behavioral, emotional, and physical health, reducing poverty and ensuring dignity for all, support equitable and sustainable neighborhoods, increase affordable and attainable housing options, expanding home buyer and homeowner assistance opportunities, ensuring healthy, sustainable, and safe homes, and improving equity in housing in general. And just some considerations in terms of like funding this year and the upcoming year. Most of the budget at the city's Housing and Community Development Department is federal funding. We aren't really sure what it's going to look like next year. We've had a mix of very different things. But we do anticipate cuts in public housing for our housing choice voucher program or Section 8. Like Lisa mentioned, our continuum care, the housing grants there, we're unsure if there's just going to be new requirements. We've heard that our community development block grants and our home grant fund grants might get cut. That's a huge part of our social services funding at the city in our housing department. And a lot of our Thrive zones that we have in Thrive in the 05 and 29th Street Thrive are through federal funding. And a lot of that funding is to fund new affordable housing in those areas. So it's all a little gray right now. We are not sure what's going to happen, but just some considerations that we do expect some cuts to these kind of programs. And if you want to read the full plan, this is the site too. It's quite a long, meaty plan, but if you're curious to see all of the data and all of the survey results, as well as all the goals and priorities. That's all.
Thank you. Did anyone have any questions for Lena on her presentation?
Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint, Lena? Is that or?
Yep, definitely. I can make sure it gets sent around.
And then the statistic you used that 6,200 new units need to be made. I can't remember the exact statistic. Is that do you take into account, if you equate that now with how many people are being evicted every year, does that take that into account? I mean, you got the number of homeless, then you've got 1,300 or whatever the number is that adds to it.
Mm-hmm.
Take away a little from it, but is that taking that all into account?
No, so the way they took this into account is some of it's taken into account for potential evictions, but it's definitely probably not at what the extent it could be.
Yeah.
When our consultant was doing the study, they were taking an account of just current underproduction in terms of homelessness. It was a mix of current homelessness numbers, current eviction filings, and if that coincided with the homelessness increase. But given potential evictions, there's probably even a larger need.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Liz has her hand up. Go ahead, Liz.
Yes, thank you. Lena, you mentioned the number for evictions and I missed it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you say that number?
Yeah, let me find that again. In 2023, for Tucson and Pima County, there were 12,993 eviction filings. And most of those were for non-payment of rent.
Non-payment. And that's 2023, so we don't have the last year.
Yeah, I couldn't find it before this meeting. I was gonna look into it, but if I find it, I'll make sure it's sent around.
Thank you so much. And this is only the evictions filings. We don't have record, we don't have the ones that have been evicted without being filed. Okay, thank you.
Then I see Tom's hand up again.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
This is the first time I've used my hand. I just cut in before, so I apologize that the protocol, I've totally blown it. And now I might have forgotten my question. It was about the evictions. I don't know. I'll have to come back to it.
That's okay. I have a question, so I'll throw mine in, and then you can have time to process and think of yourself about that. All right. So, Lena, when you were sharing the slides, there, and maybe it was in there, and while I was taking notes, I missed it. But I was curious if there was data points that said, based on age range, those experiencing homelessness or on the cusp of facing homelessness, they did their eviction filing or what have you, 18 to 25, 25 to whatever, or those that might be seniors, because at a certain age range, typically people's income becomes perhaps more fixed, and then where you are in your different seasons of life, perhaps you face different challenges or different opportunities. So I was just wondering if there was any data that kind of illustrated that breakout by age.
Yeah, I have, and I can send around the point in time count summary from this past year from 2025. That does break down. We have people if they were under the age of 18, those 18 to 24, and then those 25 plus. And then we did it's broken down by gender, ethnicity, race. And like Lisa mentioned, like adults with serious mental illness or substance misuse disorder or those numbers. So I can make sure that that's sent around. In terms of the evictions, I don't have that, but and I think beyond point in time count, we can talk with our continuum of care to see in that I think they definitely have other like more broken down data of who's actually in our shelters and those types of numbers.
Yeah. And then on that note, just to kind of tie back to some of the talking points that like Tony and someone else had mentioned about perhaps an opportunity to understand rural versus urban and some kind of that intersectionality of where things can overlap per se, like we're talking about homelessness, but it can reach over into, elderly or mature persons segments. Do we have data that shows here's kind of what it looks like in rural versus urban? Because I know some of the slides talked about Tucson, and then others also referenced Pima County as a whole. So I was just kind of curious if there was kind of a breakout, at least, rural versus urban, maybe not by jurisdiction, but rural versus urban.
I know that, a little plug for Prosperity Initiative. We're working on a metrics dashboard right now that will include county and city kind of regional data. It's not probably going to be out until January, but for the point in time or for the People, Communities, and Homes plan, a lot of it is Tucson focused just because it's for the city of Tucson. But in terms of homelessness numbers, we do, and I don't know if it's publicly available really, but for the point in time count, we do have it's geocoded when the surveys are sent in. So we do have a map of where surveyors are talking to folks who are experiencing homelessness. A lot of it's within the city, but we do send out folks to different areas of the county as well in different jurisdictions in the county. I can follow up with our continuum of care manager to see if I can share that.
Okay. Yeah, I want to be respectful of what the scope and breadth of your studies were, but I was just curious if there was any additional information that might fall into those pockets. So thank you. And then I see Tom's hands back up. So maybe I gave him enough time to remember what he was going to say earlier.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking, is there a statistic, because in the HMIS system or in any of the systems that we enter eviction prevention things, is there a statistic that says we help them with their month of rent and maybe a back payment, but they're still evicted a month later? I'd love to know like the low hanging fruit, that those people that we really help, that if I analyzed it well and said, oh, okay, if we help this month, they're good going on. But we don't really do that. It's kind of first come, first serve, so that you're treating everybody equal. But the money that we spend, could it be better used? And I bring this up, Lisa Floren's probably sick of this. I talk about it at TPCH, is there a triage system that says you are better suited to go to ICS, you're better suited to go to Old Pueblo, you're better suited to go here? Because I look at some of the people we help, and I would guarantee you, if they're not evicted the next month, they will be the third month. And that's a huge, hard thing for my staff to, how do you pick and choose? But I don't know if there's statistics like that. How much money did we spend on a person that actually gets evicted anyway?
It's a good question. I'm not sure, but I can talk with, again, our continuum of care manager, and maybe Lisa has a better answer than what I have. But I think also talking to the folks at Keith Bentley has done a lot of work in this, that he might have something, but I don't believe we're probably tracking something like that. It's just
an interesting statistic. Is how many people could you, and yes, you're probably taking the easier cases, but the reality is it's not increasing the mass of people that are evicted or on the streets or whatever it is. So Janine, thank you so much for letting me get my thoughts. I'm a little aged, so sometimes they just like flit out. So I'm good now. I'm done. I'm going to put my hand down.
No, you're good. I understand. I can't even finish a sentence in my notes sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I forgot my question that I was going to ask. So we're okay. Okay, I don't know whose hand went up first, so I think it might have been Liz Rabago, but I'm not
It
sure.
was Lisa. Go
It
ahead,
was
Lisa.
Lisa. Okay.
Yeah, I'll chime in with two things related to that question, Tom. The first is that with this pulse survey that has been going on for the past couple of years, that I think, yeah, Ciro has been helping to do. It's not after the fact, but one of the questions is if you were able to get 1 month for people that feel like they're about to be evicted within 2 months, they're asked the question, if you were able to get a month of rent, would you be able to get back on your feet? And it's something like 80% of people historically, when I've looked at that survey, have said they felt confident that they would. Granted, I don't know, that might be like a specific group of people that they're surveying and all that. And the second thing I just add is we've been doing a lot of work here at United Way with our family eviction prevention partners, kind of to just like get a profile of families that do really well with eviction prevention. And it involves a lot of kind of like intake questions around looking for households that have like stable income that have just fallen behind on like 1 month and would be able to, with just like a shot in the arm, get stable with that money and some ongoing case management. So that's kind of just, I think, like one, and then our groups do like follow up with people after the fact at their success rate in keeping them housed. So there is like some work going on, I think, in little pockets in the community to do that on a smaller scale. But like, absolutely, we need to be thinking of how we can do it on a bigger scale. And I think connecting with that HMIS system, which is the central one that so many people experiencing housing instability, that's the one that they're interacting with. Like, that's where we need to do that kind of work to send people exactly where they can get the most effective help for them.
What I'm wondering, Lisa, after your conversation, what you're saying, and Tom, is like when we have the eviction resource to people, and even if it's for 1 month, do we give them additional resources as to financial literacy or budget? I don't know, let's one-on-one coaching so that the resource or the money is there, and that additional support of getting them into making sure that they're not evicted. I mean, I understand the eviction filing is that, okay, so we couldn't do anything else. But from the beginning, do we have any data on that? That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, I'll just jump in and say, I don't think we have data on that because I don't think any of it's centralized enough. I feel like every organization that is assisting maybe with doing emergency rental assistance or doing some kind of program, they all handle it a little bit differently. I don't know if you want to chime in, Tom.
We all offer, I mean, financial literacy, workforce development, but there is a piece, there are profiles of clients that come in, and when you look at their financials, you can tell they won't make next month's rent. And it could be because of mental health. It could be a variety of reasons. And every agency is serving all these reasons, right? But if we triaged and send them to Old Pueblo because you have this and they have money for that and I have money for this and Magdalena has money for that, but we don't. We just take them, and it kills me because I can offer somebody that's going to be evicted, whether I help them today, they're going to be evicted a month later. I can offer them job or assistance or financial literacy, but they're not at that stage, right? But there are some families, and we all know that if you don't move kids, if they don't have to live in a shelter or be split, it's better for us to keep them in spot. So it's kind of it's a choice, which is a super hard thing. So instead of being called for discrimination or you didn't fund me, we just do first come, first serve. not the best use of our money, not the best use of time and talent in all of the agencies that are in Tucson.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, and we have no statistics that would prove it or doesn't. It's all, you know, if you live this every day, you
Right.
kind of just know it.
Right. Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, like, if that would make a difference, right? Like, if we would to follow people that we are helping not to be evicted from the beginning of the
Yeah.
process until the end, like, and with the resources that we have in the communities, that like, do we have any data on that? And does that work? Or does that help?
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think it would if they are ready for that. And some are and some aren't.
Thank you, Tom. Let's see if there is anyone else. And thank you, Magdalena. If there is anyone else that had any comments or questions. I don't want to accidentally overlook someone. You wouldn't think that you could easily overlook a yellow hand prompt, but you'd be surprised how that can happen. Let's see. All right. I think on that note, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and ask my team to go ahead and pull that up for me, because I want to be cognizant of the time. We're about 20 minutes until our promised time for the 2-hour mark. So it looks like we're getting ready to adjourn this meeting. So what I would like to kind of do to kind of help pull this together in preparation for the next meeting. So the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for October 21st at 2 p.m. And just like for this meeting, a link will be sent out. And we encourage you to try to use the panelists. And of course, if you don't have success with the panelist component, we can support you with that. So don't worry too much about that. What I would like to ask is 2 things. One is for those that were gracious enough to put together a presentation for us today, and I so appreciate all the time and work that went into those. If you could send me a copy of those presentations, because we put it in our file for how we champion this process. And then secondly, if you do intend to do a presentation on the October 21st meeting, again, if you could let me know by on around October 15th that that's the direction you intend to take, that would be helpful. And then if you could also submit any slides or documents that you want to share with the subcommittee members to me in advance of that meeting. I would hope at least a few business days so that I can give those to my team and have them review them just to make sure any formatting that might need to be adjusted to make sure it's visible on the screen, because we do have individuals in the community that watch this meeting on our YouTube. And so from a public meeting perspective, we want to make sure that those pieces are available as well. And then if you did not receive the template, if you will, for the fact sheets, if that's something you would prefer to submit in lieu of a presentation, let me know and I can resend it to you. And then you're welcome to use the fact sheet template as a guide for what you might speak to in your presentation. That's not a hard and fast rule. It's just an option. And then just a friendly reminder about not advocating for any one target group, and to represent facts, data regarding demographics and needs, and offer, of course, a regional perspective. And let's see. I think that's it. And I know I have some items for follow-up. So we're going to, just to keep me honest here, we're going to ask the question about bullet point number 5 for reference sources. I'm sorry, for the referral process. I believe was one of the elements. How is it characterized? Securing referral or admission for institutional care, et cetera. I have that as a question. I have the question about kind of the impact element, you know, if we could have helped this many more people, if we had this many dollars. I have a question about the contract process, and then perhaps a little bit of like distribution history, if you will, if that's how you want to characterize it, the rural versus urban appropriations. And I think within that, I think Tony had alluded to perhaps the subcommittee looking at opportunities for looking at aspects that might be interrelated, which is not necessarily a question for DES, but perhaps food for thought for this particular subcommittee. And I'm going to leave it with that. So was there anything else that was a follow-up item for me so I can make sure I include it in my list?
Well, I was just gonna offer, I feel like I heard maybe a loose request for this, and I'm happy to help with it. But would it be helpful maybe if we sent like a survey out to everyone in this group to weigh in on interruptions to funding that they could flag? And then I could kind of do like a little bit of an overarching presentation about what people share. I think maybe Tony had raised that. And if Tony, you want to talk with me separately about what questions might be, I'm happy to do that.
I can make sure that you have Tony's contact information. He might have had to step away for a moment, so I could work with you on that.
I think the survey though, Lisa, is a great idea. If you
Yeah.
just compile it all, not by agency, but here's the impact of either frozen funding or loss of funding. What is that doing to your agency?
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to include more than just the people in this group. If there's a, you know, you have an email card catalog of all the people in Tucson. So I don't know, who, you know.
And I kind of wonder too, I think maybe it's been a while, but maybe the community foundation or somebody had done an initial survey about this, right?
I think somebody did.
Yeah, so I can maybe look into finding that, but I'll do a follow-up one and try to get it out. I can share it with you, Janine, and I also share it in my circles too.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you so much. And Lena, I did receive a copy of your presentation, so thank you.
And sorry, and I just follow up with the second question. So is the goal for the next meeting for us to kind of finalize what our recommendation areas would be, or are we still thinking the next one will be more of these just getting the lay of the land presentations?
Yeah, and I believe that the draft agenda is intended to be, you know, another opportunity for our presentations. But given that we want to stay within the 2-hour time constraint, we're going to try to contain the time allotted for presentations, trying to find the balance on that so that we can account for the rest of the time allotted to be really intentional about serving up the recommendations and the discussions rooted in coming up with those recommendations. So relative to how many presentations we have will somewhat shape how much time we have allotted for the discussion. But I do want to make sure that we allot enough time to have a meaningful conversation and be really intentional. I don't want to save like 5 minutes for discussions, for recommendations, because this is, you know, too important. So we're going to try to find the balance, which is why if people can tell me in advance whether or not they intend to do a presentation on the meeting of the 21st or submit their fact sheets in lieu of a presentation at least a few days before the meeting on the 21st, it can allow me to account for the appropriate time. But knowing how many presentations we'll have is the biggest hurdle. And so if we can know that by the 15th, that would be greatly appreciated because it allows us to balance the time.
Comment about the presentations, and just so I'm clear. So the point of the presentations is to give the group more information in order to make these recommendations. Like, So that might be something to ask this group too, is how many more presentations do we think we need to make recommendations? Because if we're doing the survey, like we might not need everybody to present. Or because I think I'm under the impression that we all really should be presenting, but maybe that's not the case. Because if we do this survey and we had 2 presentations today, or where are there gaps in presentation areas that folks might be able to fill? Like I could give the public health perspective, for example, like that might be something to think about as we're organizing the time, because it's the next meeting that should be our last meeting is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's the intent for it to be the last meeting, just to be respectful of everybody's time. So
maybe we think about that of like, we might not need everybody to do a presentation next time. We may only need certain areas if we also have the results of the survey that Lisa's going to help with. Just a thing to mention.
what does the group think of that idea? And I see Elizabeth's hand up, so I'll definitely get your question or comment in a moment, Elizabeth.
I think Caroline's actually spot on. I mean, we don't need probably another presentation on homelessness prevention or whatever, but do we need more about the senior plight in Tucson or in Pima County and how they're being affected? And so that can be eviction, it certainly can be homelessness, but it's also meals. It's also how many people are living and can't get alone, how many people are living alone and can't get to the doctor. So that's kind of I think it's interesting is what else do we need more information about?
So if I can, I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I should wait. Elizabeth, maybe you should ask your question. I just have.
No, I think that let's finish this. I want to go back and ask a question at a different point.
So I'm new to this committee as well. So I want to maximize my contribution as possible so that I can. So my understanding is we have a set budget per se, right? A fund allocation, and they will go into the 5 categories or areas, Janine, that you shared, right? So it's really about a decision whether some of the funding could shift to one category wherever the need is the highest, I guess, or what we need. And so with that said, I think it's what's already out there that either organizations or groups or so forth have assessed and have that would inform, I think, a shifting where we need to prioritize the resources. So I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you, Tom. It's where do we want more information on? So my understanding, homelessness, housing is what I heard, but I'm curious as to workforce,
Right.
because workforce impacts homelessness, right, or housing and so forth. So the allocation there was like about 40,000 or so for adults only. So I'm just curious of what type of support, right, is needed or services in that area that would advance our communities, right, to gain employment or reach a livable wage or what, getting them there. So that's where I'm, and the adult services as well. What is it that our community needs? So I'm curious if there's something out there that would inform us as to what has risen up in those areas.
So are there some things that we could include in the survey that we're kind of throwing out there as a mechanism to allow for some of these other details that we want brought into the fold? I mean, obviously, we want to have a voice for all the broad service categories if possible. So is there something that we can incorporate into the survey to account for that? The other thing that I would say, as far as like the recommendations, one approach, I guess you could say, to a recommendation is allowing DES to be aware of the need in the different areas, right? So if for example purposes, if the money is not changed much from year to year, it's always on around $1.4 million. If we were to share with DES, the current amount needed in this category has historically been this, but we're anticipating a need of X, right? A 15% increase, a 20% increase in need in funding. That too could be considered a recommendation, just educating DES on like forecasting the need and what that might translate to in funding dollars. So I throw that into the discussion in terms of as we prepare on what kind of recommendations we want to make. That's another opportunity to present a recommendation or offer a voice to DES and what we're seeing in the region as far as needs. And through that, shaping some kind of priority, if you will, because when you see an uptick in one area, perhaps that's more starkly different than another, it suggests perhaps a priority. But that's a little slippery when you use the word priority, because you need an appropriate definition for that. But anyway, I just want to throw it out there that there's different ways that we can make a recommendation to DES. We don't necessarily have to recommend moving money. That is one recommendation, but we don't necessarily have to do that.
This is so tricky because I see some trends, a lot about housing, homelessness, threat of eviction. Then there's little niche things like interpreter service for folks trying to get rehab services. Right. Oh, I didn't realize I was wearing my sunglasses. That might not show up on any survey, like the interpreter service for deaf people trying to get rehab. It may be a niche thing that just doesn't have any other funding. So it seems to me so difficult when we're looking at the surveys that we're looking at to even measure, like, how do you measure that against housing, which we know is growing, and we know the need isn't being met, but there's money going that direction. I'm not sure if I formed that question well, but I
think I understand what you're saying.
I find the process tricky.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I think, without knowing the full fiscal picture of like all of these things. Yeah.
And will we, and it still might be comparing apples to oranges. Also, if I liked the tool that I think Lisa shared at the beginning that was suggested for last year to make decisions. So I'd be really interested once we look at that, like once I have that in my hands to kind of look at. But it did seem like it was based on several surveys that all seemed maybe, I'm not sure, but to lead towards to help people think about certain areas, but other areas may not occur to them doing the particular surveys with the particular questions. So I'm just still not sure that it's getting at all of the specific needs, but it does seem like a tool, and a tool would be really helpful when we're doing such a difficult decision-making process.
Yeah, I think we perhaps can still consider the survey as one tool, but also with that, still allow for a space for presentations for those that are experts in the needs for like interpreter services or some of the workforce development, allowing for an opportunity for people to present on that, where the voice of those needs might not come clearly as through in the survey as in other categories. So that's something we can kind of talk through and prepare well for in anticipation of the 21st. So I would encourage all the subcommittee members to revisit the different categories, give thoughts to what might be good questions or things we want to look at through the survey, and then also what are the key pieces that still need to be perhaps presented through a presentation if the survey tool isn't going to necessarily speak to those elements as well. So the 15th is the earmark deadline for us to at least try to capture how many additional presentations, if I can use that language, additional on the 21st. And then between now and then we can figure out what the survey might look like. And then once the 15th comes to pass, we can kind of identify how much time would obviously be allocated for presentations and then how much for the discussion tool, or the discussion to make recommendations, because it's a challenging element that or a task that's before us, right? That none of these decisions come easily, and so we want to be respectful of what's put before us and do the best we can, right? Our due diligence and be intentional around it. So
I think what might be helpful, Janine, is I don't know if we do this via email or something, but have like a list of areas where we need more information. And if someone can do a presentation on that, great, they take that one, versus having people kind of pick what they present on, because then I worry that we're going to get presentations on things that we don't need information on, and that time could have been used for other conversation. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say in the beginning, is like we might have really specific areas that we need more information on, and if this group can provide more information on those areas, that would be suitable content for a presentation.
I could put something like that together,
because I think we could get like information overload in areas that aren't going to be helpful to making a decision.
Well,
I
and
guess.
I wonder too, I mean, if it would make sense, if everyone's comfortable with it, to like explicitly reach out if we have any ideas of people that would be good to present in those areas, specifically like the rehabilitation service disability area, someone for workforce, one or two of the other ones. And I don't have any ideas off the top of my head, but I mean, I would be comfortable just, like asking them rather than leaving it open to anybody, to making sure we get a good encompassing presentation in.
No, that makes sense. So we can put together a list of areas. So we'd be really intentional about, what are the things that we really need to spend our time hearing about and using it as our part of our discussion for the recommendations. And then all the subcommittee members can give some thought to who they might know that might be experts in that space to allow us to reach out to them and see if that'd be a good fit for them.
But if we could do that before the meeting, that would be optimal. So maybe like over email, if not right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But good.
Yeah, my colleague, we would really like to do a presentation about the needs of older and disabled adults, and home care case management, and meals, nutrition.
I wrote that down, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then, Kim, not to put you on the spot, but do you know if anyone from your organization might want to speak to the need for interpreter services? I don't know if Kim's still on the call or not. Kim, are you still on the call? I don't know if Kim can hear me. I see her still logged in.
And really, that's just interpreter services for people needing rehab services, correct? I see that category, and it's just interpreter services for deaf adults. Oh,
No, I actually think it overlaps with some of the stuff you might be sharing with disability, but I think that's it's just where the services are nestled under, is in that rehabilitation services department.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll reach out to Kim. I'm not sure if she can hear me, but I'll reach out to Kim to see if her organization could provide a presentation for that particular category.
I wonder, I don't know if Cassie's still here, but if there's somebody at the county who might be able to speak about like workforce and especially like the funding.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing that for the 21st and then seeing if some of my counterparts could bring some of the rehabilitation services. Also had a question for Janine. Are you going to ask the state for what's currently budgeted at their level statewide for these categories?
Again, I could add it to the list of questions.
Because I think that trickle down will help us, kind of see, and especially with the tool that Lisa put together for the last time, it worked really well. And I think this time moving forward, it'll help.
Okay, I put that down as another question. Thank you. Okay, so just as a quick recap, I have a presentation regarding older and disabled adults. I'll reach out to Kim regarding interpreter services. And then I know Cassie, you said you were going to reach out to colleagues about workforce and rehabilitation services. Is there, I think that satisfies most of the categories, correct? Is there one that we're missing?
The only one maybe I might flag, I don't know if it's necessary, but just somebody who could maybe speak to legal assistance. Because that is a few different of the line items.
I don't know if anyone has someone internally as a colleague that might be able to speak to that, or knows of someone that could, and they could just privately through email, email myself or Lisa that contact, but that would be the one that's still kind of out there that we don't necessarily have a potential presentation around. So, all right.
It's interesting. We're hitting homelessness mostly through child and community services. Is that we've talked a lot about housing issues, but we actually haven't talked about child safety or children's services. And maybe we've hit that just fine because the issue we're talking about is how homelessness affects children, but I'm just looking at the different categories and it's
yeah, that might be just another opportunity if we do know someone that might be able to shed just some additional light in that particular area. So that would be another one. But all right. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I also don't want to clip the conversation. But we're about 4 minutes over the time. Is there anything else that we need to add to this discussion? Because this is still very important, but before we adjourn the meeting. Was there anything else? All right, so as a recap, we have PCOA, we have Cassie, potentially with her colleagues doing workforce and rehabilitation services, and then we're going to try to see if Catholic Community Services could provide some information regarding interpreter services, but then we're going to internally amongst some committee members see if there's an opportunity for a colleague or some that we know to provide insights regarding legal assistance, and then that other component for children with regard to housing, et cetera. And then the next meeting is, like I said, tentatively for the 21st at 2. And then if you are having a colleague or yourself doing a presentation, just to firm that up by the 15th, and be sure to send any materials in advance of the 21st so that we can review them and make sure that there's no formatting issues, et cetera. And then I know I got both of the presentations, I think, so we're good on that for our recording process. But in case there's anything else I still need, I'll reach out to you for that.
And I'll also plan still to do this survey and do a little presentation about that. So if anyone has ideas of questions they think should be included on it, maybe just let me know by like the end of this week.
Okay. All right. And if anybody has any additional thoughts after we conclude this meeting, feel free to email them to me, and then I will follow up accordingly. But we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting unless there's any other final comments or questions. All right. Thank you, everyone. I know this is an investment of time, and I appreciate all your work on this and your thoughtfulness and just asking really great questions. I have my to-do list, so keep me busy with that. And then we will circle back as appropriate. It is 4:06 p.m. today, October 7th. We're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and I'll see everybody on the 21st. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
All right.
you.